We're going to call the meeting of our annual meeting for the Washington Central Unified Union School District to order at 5:03. And we're going to start displaying our slides. Welcome to the people that were able to join us in person, and welcome to the people that were able to join us online. We're going to record the meeting today and upload it to our website too, and Orca would also have it available on their website. With that, we're going to jump right into the presentation today, and Stephen is going to share his screen. And for you in person here, you have the slides with you. So again, buenas noches. This is the forum is about sharing our proposed budget and informing our communities so that they can make an informed decision at the polls tomorrow. In order to paint a picture of what we're trying to achieve with our resources, this presentation is organized around a little bit of a timeline. What do we need to accomplish with the resources for our schools? A little bit of a budget framework and context, our Washington Central mission, our core beliefs, the enrollment in the board budget parameters, a little bit of the tax information and the implications of those taxes on your property, and the budget warning, and then we'll move into questions. So next slide, please, Stephen. So here you can see that the budget is for us is really a year-round process. We started back in September with budget training and looking at our capital improvement projects and giving our preliminary guidance to our leadership team. The board review in November, I'm going to jump a little bit around. The board review in November level service draft for year 2026-2027 budget, and we included some community engagement through that process. The goal of that presentation for us was to understand what the estimate cost to support the current programs were. The board hosted what we call community input at the beginning of those meetings, and we did some presentation and then we do Q&A, which is what the community has asked us to do, and what the board has been doing with our superintendent in order to best make sure that all of our community is informed and they have a chance to ask direct questions to our superintendent and the board. We warned the final budget on January 21st. And on February 10th, the Calais and Worcester had their vote. And as you know, we're here on March 2nd for informational meeting, and town meeting is tomorrow. Next time, slide, please. Here you see our mission statement, and I'm not gonna read it. You have it on your notes there, and you can read it yourself online. But budget is a reflection of our mission and our vision and our beliefs for our students. How we choose to use our resources must match what we need to accomplish with students, and must come to not to say a price, but will be to be fiscally responsible for our communities too. We always want to keep our students at the center of this work, which is why the mission statement is here. And like it says there, we want to exist to nurture our students and inspire our students to be global contributors to all of our communities. Next slide. I want to underscore here that the budget process should be grounded, like we were talking about, not just in our mission, but also in the narrative of what our communities want for our kids. The budget is a narrative that, when done well, should reflect the student needs and our community core values. And what you see here are our core values: humanity and justice, community and belonging, well-being, transparent and responsible leadership, community engagement and relationships, and rigorous curriculum and instruction. Next slide. These are the goals of our strategic plan: building and nurturing a culture of well-being and inclusivity, challenging and empowering and engaging each student through evidence-based instructional strategies and curriculum and varied educational opportunities, fostering and committing to responsible leadership that engages our community and communicates transparently. With that, I will add that every time that our leadership team looks at our budget, we always try to keep equity as a lens we use to make sure that we keep academic achievement, student outcomes, student health and student safety, and humanity and justice as a lens where we see these three strategic plan goals. Next slide. The budget context that we're sharing here is the configuration committee developed criteria, and the leadership team then develop parameters or how we could provide that, how could we make that criteria a reality in our schools. The committee review modeling for different options of school configuration. The configuration committee recommended a 3 multi-town elementary school to the board. As you know, the board approved that 3 multi-town elementary school. And the budget that you see here was warned on January 21st with a contingency plan in case, depending on how the vote this is important context for you guys to know if you were not aware of this. The board reviewed that after the vote, as we know, both Calais and Worcester voted to remain with their schools open. So the board reviewed the contingency part of the budget at our February 18th meeting. And once the budget is passed, and Stephen can correct me if I'm wrong, but once the budget is passed, they will completely finalize the allocation of staff across our schools. And you will be able to ask questions at the end, especially if there's any questions around this. Next slide. The budgetary pressures that we have right now, we are currently negotiating salary and benefits increase. We have a negotiating committee. One of our members of the negotiating committee sits with us today. Patrick is here with us. We also are facing the loss of federal funding, reduction of Medicaid, and Title IV enrollment declines. As you know, our enrollment has been declining over 14% over the past 10 years. So that means that our long-term weighted average daily membership, actual students, also has declined. The inflation in December 2025 was 2.5% as the regional rate. And the last slide that I will share with you is the board set parameters all the way back in October. And the way that the board sets its parameters is to give guidance, because we don't get in the day-to-day operations. We are up here at 30,000-foot level. So we give parameters, and these parameters that we gave our leadership team, they use them in order to model and bring a proposed budget to us. Those parameters was to create robust multi-layer system of supports across all schools, and not really to create, but to sustain, because we have had a multi-layer system of supports across our schools. Equitably provide resources to our schools, to our students, expand pre-K offerings where possible, remain below the state spending threshold, and keep our long-term weighted IDM per pupil spending to not increase more than 5%. As you know, we were not able to achieve that, but that was one of the parameters we gave them. Develop a contingency plan for configuration. As I explained before, we were going to go to vote after we were warning our budget. And even though we didn't know that back then, we wanted to have a contingency plan. And the last parameter was to be creative and strategic in achieving educational outcomes, which was also how can we best serve our students, and are we structuring the best way to serve all our students. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Daniel to talk to you about enrollment.
Thanks, Laura. Welcome those in the room, welcome those online. For those who don't know me, I'm Daniel Keeney, a board member, resident of Palace as well. So the first slide I'm presenting is on enrollment, the theme of which is enrollment decline. The table on the left shows a school by school enrollment, both in fiscal year 2015, then a decade later, last year in fiscal year 2025, and current enrollment, fiscal year 2026. The table on the right shows projected enrollment from now through the next 6 projected school years. The one case sort of in which This doesn't compare apples to apples. You'll note that the table on the left is pre-K to 6. The table on the right is kindergarten to 6, mostly attributable to the fact that pre-K enrollment is notoriously difficult to project. Next slide.
These are the basic or fundamental budget priorities that administration and the board set when developing our budget. First, that programming drives the structure of the district. Second, that the structure itself drives budget. And third, that we maintain our capital spending plan.
The leadership team and school board consider student needs, education quality, and evidence-based practices to make decisions for the development of this budget.
Also, an equitable distribution of resources is underway with all of these priorities. And as a reminder, while there are many definitions of equity, the Vermont Agency of Education defines it as, quote, every student will have access to the educational resources and
they need at the right moment in their education across race, gender, ethnicity, language, disability, sexual orientation, family background, and or family income, unquote. And also a reminder that we leverage our core beliefs as set forth in our strategic plan and everything we talked about at the beginning of this presentation as well in developing our budget.
Next time. I get to do the budget projections. So they gave me the big slide. We're on page, I don't even know. 11, for those of you following along on paper.
Now on 12.
Now on 12, okay. So I'm going to talk about our long-term weighted average daily membership. That's that LTW ADM, which is a 2-year average of student counts weighted for different needs. So whether it's their age, English language learners, sparsity, small school. I have not unmuted my mic.
Want to start again?
I'll start again. Hi, we're on page 12 of the slideshow for those of you following along on the paper. I am talking about our budget projections and budget funds, and right now we're talking about the long-term average daily, long-term, am I still muted? I'm good. I had to do it in 2 places. I'm gonna try again. Okay, now I'm unmuted, for real. I'm jumping right in on slide 12, talking about our long-term weighted average daily membership, that LTW ADM, which is a 2-year average of our daily membership plus state-placed averages on different factors that affect how much it costs to educate students. So that could be poverty, sparsity, grade levels, population density, small schools, and English language learners. Our long-term weighted average daily membership for this year declined by 6.38%, which was about just under 2.5 million in allocation reductions. Our local spending, which is our net spending budget per long-term weighted average daily membership, increased by 7.21%. And it puts us at $97 per weighted pupil below the threshold. And that threshold, that excess spending threshold, is where we get taxed double on every dollar over that spending threshold that we go. So that was one of those limits that the board felt was very important to hold for fiscal responsibility. Next slide. General fund budget. So our authorized expenses is $43,200, $71,845, which was a 0.11%. 43 million. Did I say 43,000 and then another thought? Nice. It's a big number. So 0.11% increase over last year's authorized expenses. Our revenues decreased by 1.24% to $6,934,032, which left our net education spending at $36,333,000 $337,813, which is a 0.37% increase over last year's budget. And now we have a pie chart. It's number 14, chart 14. It's in color for you guys even this year. And you'll note this is where we broke out how our spending is distributed. So the big blue one is our school-based at 47.9%. So that's like our teachers, paras, food service. Nope, not food service. Taking that back. Principals, materials, books, field trips. The red pie section is our special education spending, 24% of our budget. Operations and building, right, it's essentially building maintenance, so operations and maintenance at 9.9% in that orange. Green is our transportation. Is that just, that does not include field trip transportation? Our regular transportation. The darker orange is that technology services, 3.8%. Then we have our debt services at 2.2%, central office at 4.9% of our budget, fund transfers at 2.3%. And that is how our spending distribution is divided out. And now I get to pass it to Zach, who gets to talk tax rates. Congratulations.
So we are going to spend it.
So if you'll
sorry.
yours.
Thank you. I was so going to remember it right until the moment when I needed to. So for those of you following on paper, on page 15 now, and we're going to take a pretty decent detour to the common level of appraisal because that is a significant part of the story of what's happening with tax rates this year. It's also a big part of what the story of why the tax rates are so different across different towns, which is something that's going to keep rolling for the next few years as towns reappraise. Basically what Vermont does in terms of how we run our tax system, everyone is paying into a central pool and then money is being distributed back out from that central pool. So to figure out how much everyone should be taxed, you need to reappraise pretty frequently. It's a problem in a state where some of our towns haven't reappraised since I think 2007 or maybe 2009. And so the common level appraisal is based on a study the state does looking at a rolling 3 years of home sales to look at where the appraisals, how properties are actually appraised and what are appraised and then what they're actually selling for. And it adjusts the tax rates so that people in two towns owning homes that would actually sell for the same amount of money pay the same number of dollars in taxes, even if their appraised values for those homes are wildly different. To give a perspective of how different that can be, Worcester just reappraised last year, and we saw $250,000 homes suddenly get reappraised at $400,000. We would expect that in East Montpelier and Middlesex, that home would still be appraised at about $250,000, but would be selling at $400,000. And so there are really significant differences in the tax rate to make sure that the people in equivalent homes are paying equivalent amounts. What you see in the column that says CLA change, that is, when you look at how much the CLA is changing, that is being driven by how much property values have changed. I could editorialize for a moment. I think the state should have inverted it so that if the CLA rose, your tax rate rose. That would have been more intuitive. But what they're doing is mathematically equivalent. So what you're seeing is when you see the CLA drop, that's saying that the property, the appraised value is gotten significantly has gotten even lower than the actual value, and so those decreases then translate into tax increases. The opposite is going on in Worcester, where you had the reappraisal, and so now they are, now they've popped way back up above baseline. The other thing to know about this is relative to the state average number. The reason we keep adding more letters to the acronyms up here. A couple of years ago, they changed the system so that so there's a statewide adjustment, so that all you're seeing is the variation compared to what's happening in the state. And this is sort of a response to with the property values rising so sharply during the pandemic, it became really hard to budget when there was that much uncertainty. So they're just saying, are you going up faster or slower than other towns? And so what you see here with these negative numbers, Berlin, property values in Berlin increased a little bit faster than the state average, but not by a lot. Whereas in Calais, East Montpelier, and Middlesex, values increased quite a bit faster than state averages. I have actually ran this calculation this morning. Yeah, so it's so in Calais, it's about 12.5% faster than the state average. East Montpelier is a little over 10. Middlesex is just shy of 12.5%. So then if we go to the next slide, this is 16 into the tax rates. This is where this is translating into this is where you see the variation between towns driven by those differences in property values. You see we have the just sort of going through it. We have this statewide adjusted ELA percentage number. See the tax rates both for this year and then last year, and then the change. And you'll notice that where it gives that percentage increase, that is actually very, very close to those changes in property values. That's really the driver here. We had you see a big difference, big impact in our per pupil spending. That's because we lost a lot of students. The state as a whole also lost students. And so for us, where we see that variation, the variation particularly between towns, that's what's driving it. Our equalized homestead tax rate, which is before you have the town level differences, increased from $1.7766 dollars per $100 of value to $1.7773. For those of you who didn't catch that calculation, that's 7/100ths of a cent increase in that equalized number. So we can go to the next slide. So then this is giving you those numbers in actual dollar values, since I think that people that's the number that people actually care about, rather than tax rates out to 4 decimal points. And the thing I just want to note again, because there is such a wild disparity in rates across the district, that what the difference you're looking at between Worcester and everyone else is that home that's really a $400,000 home in Worcester is appraised at $400,000, and everywhere else is appraised at about $250,000. And so that's, if you sort of see that number and go, why is that? Why is it so less? It's because the appraisal is so different and the dollars come out pretty similar. I'll hand it back to Fleur.
So we are at our mute myself. So this is kind of the end of the presentation. Oh. Okay, the budget we presented enables our district to provide quality education for our kids and reflects our commitment to academic excellence, safe schools, inclusive and healthy schools. We're committed to working with our communities to develop a long-term plan that educates all of our kids. We are also committed to collaboration and earning the community's trust. The budget we presented tonight reflects all of those values that I just described. Our district is a sending district to the Vermont Career Center too. So I want to remind everybody to ask for their ballots and vote on the Career Center budget. That budget is already included in our budget, so it's not like you're voting extra. Those dollars are already included in our budget, but it's really important for you to vote because it's a separate district. We are not permitted to ask you to vote for any of these budgets one way or another. What I'm asking you is to vote for and support our kids. We hope that this information that we have shared with you tonight helps you make an informed decision at the polls. And we really thank you for your engagement here with us tonight. I'm going to open it up for questions, both from the public online and for the public here. And when we're done with questions, I also have a couple of potential board members for our board that are here with us tonight, and I was going to open it up to them to be able to say something about themselves if they would like. Any questions on the presentation that you heard tonight, whether it's on the taxes or what is the fund, on staff, anything? Our superintendent is here with us.
Or comments.
or comments. Yeah, or comments or reflections of the budgeting process. Hopefully, a lot of you were paying attention through this months of budgeting. I don't see, I'm gonna double check again.
Turning green sliver top of the right.
For those online, there was a question about the pie chart on spending distribution on page 14 and what the green sliver at the very top of that pie chart was.
You want me to answer? I can
Yeah.
answer.
So the tiny green sliver, there, one of them is board services. I think it's the tiniest one that's there. And then there's actually another little sliver there as well. That is just other expenses. It's just kind of that catch-all for a bunch of different little things. That, yeah.
Any other questions? Online, anybody? We have about 11 people online, well, including us, so less than that. Okay, I don't see any hands up.
I have more questions.
Yeah,
There are no
go
questions.
ahead, Linda.
So.
You know what, why don't you hold 1 minute? I'm gonna bring my computer over there so that people can hear your question and you don't have to.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Hi. So, over the last couple of months, the budget has changed and we've seen different figures and so on. And towards the last 5 weeks, there were some changes in revenue, I think, or long-term weighted average or something changed to allow some other distributions that you've made. And I wonder if you could go into those a little bit and what changes you made since you can go from either 2A or budget 3.
Yeah, so we did have so from draft 1 to draft 2, A and B, to draft 3, and then even to our final budget that we warned, there were fluctuations in our calculations for our long-term weighted average daily membership. So at one point in time, I think it was more around budget 2A and B, is that we were almost 190 students is what we thought our reduction was going to be in our long-term weighted average daily membership. That actually, when we were able to finalize that, it finalized at the number that you saw here, which was 151. That change is pretty significant in terms of dollars, because every one of those students counts for $16,000, a little over $16,000. And so what we did in our contingency, because that's where we finally caught up with all of the estimations for some of that, we were able to allocate a little bit more money to the schools for them to add in some, and there were some slight increases. So in budget 2A, just an example, there may have been 1 day of nursing services for some of the elementary schools. They were able to up it to 2 or 3 days. They might be able to increase the school counselor by a day. So we were able to make some fine adjustments to some of those, which was favorable. I mean, that's certainly what we want to be able to see. But those, most of that change came from a little bit of savings that we were able to find on the centralized services, but mostly because of the not as many student loss in our long-term weighted average daily membership.
Any other questions?
Linda, did you have others? Or? If there's time, I'd love to know how you sorted out, you kind of.
Yeah.
And so, nursing, I heard.
Yeah. I can go. I can give a little more detail. So the question from the floor was, how did we sort out some of the additional funds? So what we essentially did was we allocated those funds to each of the elementary schools, and then there was also a slight amount that we added to U32 because we changed the amount of money that we were able to allocate to each of the schools, which is the formula that we've been using for our budgeting process. At that point in time, the principals, their teams worked on what were some of the additions that could be made. And so And like I said, at the elementary schools, there was a slight increase to some nursing. There was some slight increases to some school counseling, depending on which school it was. There was one school that was able to add, I think, an additional day for their interventionist, which was that was one of the pieces that was their first priority. And then at U32, we added back in the 0.2 cut that had been made in music and the 0.2 cut that had been made in art to balance those back out. Because, and this is where it gets a little tricky, like the class sizes and the number of courses may not fully dictate that, but having a part-time person is extremely difficult. In many of those roles. And so we were going to have multiple part-time people within the music program at U32, and we still have part-time people within the program at the elementary schools. The funds just wouldn't support additional. And there are also not enough classrooms to support having additional days in some cases. So when you look at our elementary schools, the number of art teachers and music teacher and librarian are dictated somewhat by the number of classrooms that you have in the school, because those are the people that help provide both the service, the actual art and music and library time, but they also help provide the planning time that teachers are contractually able to get. And so that's why when you see us say there are 40 minutes a day of one of those things, that 40 minutes is the teacher planning time as well that they're contractually obligated for. And so that's how often the kids meet in those, and PE is another one of those. And that's how often the kids meet in those. If you add more time for the teacher, the music teacher, there's not necessarily a class for them to teach. And there's not necessarily same for the art teacher, because the students are doing other activities in their regular schedule. And so, so the number of classrooms is what drives the amount of time that you would have a teacher at the school for those subject areas in general. But we were able to increase it here at U32 a little bit so that those could be full-time positions. And we think that that'll certainly provide a few other opportunities for kids.
So I noticed a reduction in curriculum services. And I didn't know what that was about.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. So the question was, there was a reduction in curriculum services. Yes, that was, we reduced the amount of time that our teachers would come in the summer to do their curriculum work. So it was just a reduction in that summer work. Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions? I don't see anybody else. I just do want to clarify, Linda, about the questions that were just asked, that the overall amount on the warning of the budget did not change. The fluctuation came from the additional, not additional, but the change on the long-term weighted pupil. But the amount, we haven't increased the budget amount. I just don't want it to be confusing for people. So with that, I'm gonna let both Dave and Katie, if you wanted to share something of why you're interested in running for the board. I know Dave is on the ballot and Katie is running as a write-in. And you can come over, or I can just come over there. And sorry for people online that I'm like making you dizzy. Sorry.
Or you, I think Marilyn Martin may also be.
Oh, there's, okay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dave Lowther and I'm running for school board in East Montpelier, and I'm really just hoping to do my part to support the hard work that's happening here at the school board.
Thank you.
Well, I was wrong. That was the person.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Katie Marshall and I'm running as a writing candidate for the open seat in Middlesex. And yeah, I'm running because I'm very invested in the schools, mainly because I have 2 children, a kindergartner and a pre-K student, one at Rumney, one at Berlin this year. And, really wanted to get involved. And also in my professional life, I have worked kind of for the past decade plus in community engagement and strategic communications, often around big community projects that involve some high level of stakeholder engagement and communication. And so, yeah, we've loved our experience so far in the Washington Central District, and would love the opportunity to represent Middlesex and really young families in our district who plan to be invested for many years in the schools.
Thank you, Katie. So I think with that, and while I'm walking back here, we can conclude our annual meeting unless any of my board members have a comment or anything. We just want to thank you for coming. Please remind your neighbors and friends to vote. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We'll conclude our meeting at 5:37. That's